Welcome to Andy Reads the Bible, where we're reading through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation in 1 year. I'm your host, Andy Brassfield. Today is January the 21st, and I'll be reading Exodus 12 through 14 from the Message translation. Exodus chapter 12. God said to Moses and Aaron while still in Egypt, "This month is to be the first month of the year for you. Address the whole community of Israel. Tell them that on the 10th of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one lamb to a house. If the family is too small for a lamb, then share it with a close neighbor, depending on the number of persons involved. Be mindful of how much each person will eat. Your lamb must be a healthy male, 1 year old. You can select it from either the sheep or the goats. Keep it pinned until the 14th day of this month and then slaughter it. The entire community of Israel will do this at dusk. Then take some of the blood and smear it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which you will eat it. You are to eat the meat roasted in the fire that night, along with bread made without yeast and bitter herbs. Don't eat any of it raw or boiled in water. Make sure it's roasted, the whole animal, head, legs, and innards. Don't leave any of it until morning. If there are leftovers, burn them in the fire. And here's how you are to eat it. Be fully dressed, with your sandals on and your stick in your hand. Eat in a hurry. It's the Passover to God. I will go through the land of Egypt on this night and strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, whether human or animal, and bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am God. The blood will serve as a sign on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. No disaster will touch you when I strike the land of Egypt. This will be a memorial day for you. You will celebrate it as a festival to God down through the generations, a fixed festival celebration to be observed always. You will eat unraised bread, matzah, for 7 days. On the first day, get rid of all the yeast from your houses. Anyone who eats anything with yeast from the first day to the 7th day will be cut off from Israel. The 1st and the 7th days are set aside as holy. Do no work on those days. Only what you have to do for meals. Each person can do that. Keep the festival of unraised bread. This marks the exact day I brought you out in force from the land of Egypt. Honor the day down through your generations, a fixed festival to be observed always. In the 1st month, beginning on the 14th day at evening until the 21st day at evening, you are to eat unraised bread. For those 7 days, not a trace of yeast is to be found in your houses. Anyone, whether a visitor or native of the land, who eats anything raised shall be cut off from the community of Israel. Don't eat anything raised, only matzah. Moses assembled all the elders of Israel. He said, "Select a lamb for your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the bowl of blood and smear it on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts. No one is to leave the house until morning. God will pass through to strike Egypt down. When he sees the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts, God will pass over the doorway. He won't let the destroyer enter your house to strike you down with ruin. Keep this word. It's the law for you and your children forever. When you enter the land which God will give you as he promised, keep doing this. And when your children say to you, 'Why are we doing this?' tell them, 'It's the Passover sacrifice to God, who passed over the homes of the Israelites in Egypt when he hit Egypt with death but rescued us.'" The people bowed and worshipped. The Israelites then went and did what God had commanded Moses and Aaron. They did it all. At midnight, God struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, right down to the firstborn of the prisoner locked up in jail, also the firstborn of the animals. Pharaoh got up that night, he and all his servants and everyone else in Egypt. What wild wailing and lament in Egypt! There wasn't a house in which someone wasn't dead. Pharaoh called in Moses and Aaron that very night and said, "Get out of here and be done with you, you and your Israelites. Go worship God in your own terms, and yes, take your sheep and cattle as you've insisted, but go and bless me." Chapter 13. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Set apart every firstborn to me. The first one to come from the womb among the Israelites, whether person or animal, is mine." Moses said to the people, "Always remember this day. This is the day when you came out of Egypt from a house of slavery. God brought you out of here with a powerful hand. Don't eat any raised bread. You are leaving in the spring month of Abib, when God brings you unto the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, which he promised to your fathers to give you, a land lavish with milk and honey. You are to observe this service during this month. You are to eat unraised bread for 7 days. On the 7th day there is a festival celebration to God. Only unraised bread is to be eaten for 7 days. There is not to be a trace of anything fermented, no yeast anywhere. Tell your child on that day, this is because of what God did for me when I came out of Egypt. The day of observance will be like a sign in your hand, a memorial between your eyes, and the teaching of God in your mouth. It was with a powerful hand that God brought you out of Egypt. Follow these instructions at the set time, year after year after year. When God brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he promised you and your fathers, and turns it over to you, you are to set aside the first birth out of every womb to God. Every first birth from your livestock belongs to God. You can redeem every first birth of a donkey if you want to by substituting a lamb. If you decide not to redeem it, you must break its neck. Redeem every firstborn child among your sons. When the time comes and your son asks you, "What does this mean?" you tell him, "God brought us out of Egypt, out of a house of slavery, with a powerful hand." When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, God killed every firstborn in Egypt, the firstborn of both humans and animals. That's why I make a sacrifice for every first male birth from the womb to God and redeem every firstborn son. The observance functions like a sign in your hands or a symbol in the middle of your forehead. God brought us out of Egypt with a powerful hand. It so happened that after Pharaoh released the people, God didn't lead them by the road through the land of the Philistines, which was the shortest route. For God thought, if the people encounter war, they'll change their minds and go back to Egypt. So God led the people on the wilderness road, looping around to the Red Sea. The Israelites left Egypt in military formation. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the Israelites solemnly swear to do it, saying, "God will surely hold you accountable, so make sure you bring my bones from here with you." They moved on from Succoth and then camped at Etham at the edge of the wilderness. God went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud during the day to guide them on the way, and at night a pillar of fire to give them light. Thus they could travel both day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never left the people. Chapter 14. God spoke to Moses. Tell the Israelites to turn around and make camp at Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. Camp on the shore of the sea opposite Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are lost, they're confused. The wilderness has closed in on them. Then I'll make Pharaoh's heart stubborn again, and he'll chase after them, and I'll use Pharaoh and his army to put my glory on display. Then the Egyptians will realize that I'm God." And that's what happened. When the king of Egypt was told that the people were gone, he and his servants changed their minds. They said, "What have we done, letting Israel, our slave labor, go free?" So he had his chariots harnessed up and got his army together. He took 600 of his best chariots, with the rest of the Egyptian chariots and their drivers coming along. God made Pharaoh, king of Egypt, stubborn, determined to chase the Israelites as they walked out on him without even looking back. The Egyptians gave chase and caught up with them where they had made camp by the sea. All Pharaoh's horse-drawn chariots and their riders, all his foot soldiers there at Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up and saw them, Egyptians, coming at them. They were totally afraid. They cried out in terror to God. They told Moses, "Weren't the cemeteries large enough in Egypt so that you had to take us out here in the wilderness to die? What have you done to us, taking us out of Egypt? Back in Egypt, didn't we tell you this would happen? Didn't we tell you, leave us alone here in Egypt? We're better off as slaves in Egypt than as corpses in the wilderness." Moses spoke to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and watch God do his work of salvation for you today. Take a good look at the Egyptians today, for you're never going to see them again. God will fight the battle for you, and you keep your mouths shut." God said to Moses, "Why cry out to me? Speak to the Israelites. Order them to get moving. Hold your staff high and stretch your hand out over the sea. Split the sea. The Israelites will walk through the sea on dry ground. Meanwhile, I'll make sure the Egyptians keep up their stubborn chase. I'll use Pharaoh and his entire army, his chariots and horsemen, to put my glory on display so that the Egyptians will realize that I am God." The angel of God that has been leading the camp of Israel now shifted and got behind them. And the pillar of cloud that had been in front also shifted to the rear. The cloud was now between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. The cloud enshrouded one camp in darkness and flooded the other with light. The two camps didn't come near each other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and God, with a terrific east wind all night long, made the sea go back. He made the sea dry ground. The sea waters split. The Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground with the waters a wall to the right and to the left. The Egyptians came after them in full pursuit, every horse and chariot and driver of Pharaoh racing into the middle of the sea. It was now the morning watch. God looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud on the Egyptian army and threw them into a panic. He clogged the wheels of their chariots. They were stuck in the mud. The Egyptians said, "Run from Israel. God is fighting on their side and against Egypt." God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters will come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots, over their horsemen." Moses stretched his hand out over the sea. As the day broke and the Egyptians were running, the sea returned to its place as before. God dumped the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The waters returned, drowning the chariots and riders of Pharaoh's army that had chased after Israel into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites walked right through the middle of the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall to the right and to the left. God delivered Israel that day from the oppression of the Egyptians. And Israel looked at the Egyptian dead, washed up on the shore of the sea, and realized the tremendous power that God brought against the Egyptians. The people were in reverent awe before God and trusted in God and his servant Moses. And that concludes today's reading, Exodus 12 through 14. Exodus is such a fun book of the Bible, but when you read this, it's not just a story. This is history, and this is God's power on display. And he really did separate the sea, a wall of water on the right and a wall of water on the left. And I don't know about you, but I've had times in my life where I felt like I was up against the sea and being chased by Pharaoh and his army. And I panic. I don't know what to do. But God comes to my rescue, and he opens up the sea and allows me to walk across on dry land, even though I thought things were hopeless. So remember, God wants us to succeed. He wants us to do well. He doesn't want to entrap us or hurt us in any way. He wants us to do well. Today's podcast is sponsored by Brassy Bees, where we rescue honeybees. Don't spray bees, call me. To learn more about Brassy Bees honeybee removal services, visit us on the web at brassybees.com. That's brassybees.com. Look us up on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and your favorite podcasting app. Search for Andy Reads the Bible. Our podcast page is located at andybible.libsyn.com. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll see you tomorrow.